Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin for episode 16. Today's guest is Joe Oliver. Joe is a partner at KO Sports Inc., which is an NHL agency representing some current NHL players with names like Kyle Turris, Ryan Johansen, Jacub Trouba, Dylan Larkin, Travis Zajac, Mike Smith, Jack Campbell. The list goes on and on. They are well represented in the industry. They consider themselves a boutique agency, which means that they are not trying to win the game by bringing in tons and tons of people. They are trying to evaluate the talent that they think has the most potential to become NHL players and move on to NHL careers, which brings in what Joe does for KO Sports. He's been a coach or a scout or a talent evaluator in hockey for now more than 20 years. He is recognized as one of the best evaluators of talent in Western Canada, and it's his job to go through Western Canada to identify who these top players are around the ages of 14, 15 years old for the Bantam draft. So he takes his job very seriously. He believes in relationships. He believes in development. And today's episode is a really wild ride on what it's like to be an agent in this game we call hockey. A lot of questions get answered. We cover a lot of ground here. Joe is really gracious with his time, and I really, really enjoyed the conversation. So without further ado, I bring you Joe Oliver of KO Sports. All right. Well, welcome to episode 16 here at Up My Hockey. And today we have Joe Oliver. Joe, thanks so much for joining today.
I've been looking forward to this. I know we tried to get together in the fall and it didn't seem to work out. So I'm glad we're on here now.
I know everyone seems to have a little bit more time on their hands right now, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah. How has it affected you and what you guys are doing? What does your days look like?
You know what? We're still working. Different landscape for sure. We're on the phone a lot, talking to clients a lot. From the NHL guys down, just kind of having conversations about what they're doing to keep sane in these crazy times, and also all the way down to the young guys who maybe have a different landscape where they've got many months now where they're not on the ice, and there's different opportunities for them for skating, for training, for development. And I know that might sound a little bit weird because they're not able to go out and do things, but I've told guys, like, if you can have access to any kind of training equipment, you got a chance to do something now that there's no other time that you're able to do it, because you've got maybe a clear 3 months. And it might even be longer than that. It may be 5 months where you're not skating. And from the game that when you're skating every day, what that can mean for your joints and injuries. And guys don't want to get off the ice. It's like you almost have to get mad at them sometimes to say, you got to get off the ice. You got to rest your body in one way and train your body in another way. So just interesting now, because now I look at it and go, well, these guys can train. They can eat right, sleep right, and hopefully by August, if that actually, if all the schedules come in tune and everything gets going, they're going to have a chance to do something maybe they never were able to do before.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's amazing. You had it that already. We're 5 minutes in here and you're talking about opportunities, and that's exactly what I've been talking about on my platform and with the players that I've been working with, is that it's easy to focus on the negative in something like this. And it seems like, I'm not allowed on the ice and I can't get to a gym and I can't. But
Yes.
There is a lot of things you can do that might even be more beneficial for you if you want to see them, right? And take advantage of those opportunities.
100%. And then there's the kind of the ingenuity part of what you have that you have access to that might be, I don't want to say it's not groundbreaking, but it's different than maybe you were doing before. I've told, guys, tell your parents, phone their neighbors, phone their friends. I mean, there's lots of people that have some gym equipment in their house that they thought they were going to use 5 and 10 years ago that they might, let you use, whether they're dumbbells or barbells and that type of thing. But
Yeah.
I had one of our clients, just a young guy that's going to play in the Western Hockey League this year as a 16-year-old. He sent this video yesterday, and he's got this driveway, and he's got like big chunks of wood, like this big chopping block, and he's talking about how he's using them for squats and stuff. And I was like, that is just amazing. I love that. That's what we're talking about. You don't have the dumbbells, find a way, because somebody else is doing it, whether you're doing it or not.
Right. 100%. It's almost like Rocky IV. I think about Rocky training in Russia there, finding the ways to train. And again, we're being a little bit traditional, thinking about training aspect, like your physical body for sure. I mean, I believe calisthenics is a major advantage. Guys always want to load. It's much just with your body weight. But it's also a time to work on the mindset. And I know from reading about your website on KO Sports, that you guys, your 360 approach, and that you're really belief in the development off ice, that there's a lot of things these guys can be working on just with their mindset and their heads right now that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to look at.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because there's lots of different avenues to kind of go and find that information too. Like, I'll talk to guys during the season, and we'll talk about, like, how much do you actually watch games? Do you watch NHL games on TV? And they're like, no, we don't really have that much time. I get a game in here and a game in there. I'm like, you can go online now, and you can watch every game from this year. There's a defenseman that you're like, hey, I really like this defenseman. He's a small, skilled defenseman. You can go back and you can watch the video of every game that he played. When would you have that opportunity before this? Probably never. And also, get you away from the Netflix too.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to, if you want to be curious, like I said, you use that word ingenuity, you want to be curious, there's ways to dig in. And that's something that I really try and talk to my players about is that, right? Getting curious about the game and about where you want to get to and who you want to be. And you start asking different questions, which are going to give you different answers. And now is the perfect time for that. Like, I love that. You can be bored stiff, or you can be really creative right now.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. I've got a dad. One of my client's dad, he's actually got two boys that I work with, and he's up in his big shop up north, and he's making these shooting nets and this stuff for his kids up there to shoot on, and it's just amazing. Like, it's like he's like, I got to do this. First of all, he's telling me it's protect his shop. Then the second part of it is he's got these boys who are throwing passes across and doing one-timers, and it's just an unbelievable little setup that he's got there. But he put the time and energy in to do it, to try to figure something out, to be creative and find a way.
Yeah, 100%. I've got a couple of my guys to build their own slide boards. I mean, you can buy them too, but I mean, I'm a bit of a traditionalist that way. I think that's an amazing tool for athletes right now.
Right.
Yeah. And what is it? I could build one for $40. I mean, all you do is go to Home Depot and do it, right? It's a question of whether you want to do it or
not. Right.
But anyways, let's get back to you though, Joe, and like how you got started in this agency business. I know you've been at it for a long time. What was your draw and what was kind of your genesis story?
Well, I was in coaching for a long time. Back in the days when my brother Dave was playing, I felt like I was a bit of a mentor to him. As an older brother, he's 7 years younger than I was, and did a lot of coaching. Coached, when he was young, and then when I had kids, I coached my son. So you're kind of in the thick of things when you're working with players and stuff. So it's something that I really like to do. I like to work with them, and kind of worked my way up. Coached, junior hockey here in Vernon, and when that came to an end, the guy that was my brother's agent, Kurt Hoverhart, Kurt called me, and he's like, would you be interested in doing some scouting for me? And I wasn't sure at the time. I wasn't sure what that would be or what that would look like for me. But I told him I'd give it a try. There was some criteria, and in that I was not going to go to the rinks and flip business cards to 15 and 16-year-old kids and their parents and stuff. And he said, no, that's not how I do it. It's really personal. I believe in what I do. I believe in the process. And if you're willing to do that, then I'm good with it. So that's really how it happened. And this is probably, maybe early 2000s, somewhere in that ballpark. So I started going out to watch games. You start watching the Western League, and then you realize that a lot of those guys have agents and advisors and stuff already. So, then you got to go back a bit. So I went back to, the midget level and started watching players. And, probably one of the first guys that I watched that was, one of our guys that we kind of recruited and helped along the way was Blake Como, who's in Dallas. And he was a midget player, recently drafted. I think he was drafted the year before by Kelowna in the second round. And then he made the transition to the Western League, played in Kelowna throughout his junior career. And then, he's carved out a really good pro career for himself and still going. So really proud of that, really proud of him and what he's been able to do. And, that kind of gets the juices flowing a little bit and you understand what it's about. And so I did find out after that pretty quick that you had to go back even younger. And we started watching Bantam kids, which it sounds crazy, at the time, but that is the playing field. And so we went out and watched and, I started watching and this is back in the day when this is before all the academies and the CSSHL was a big thing. It wasn't even around at that point. And probably the next player that, I watched as a young guy was Kyle Turris. And I watched him and met with his family and, they were gracious enough to introduce me to Kyle at a really young age and work with him. And, he's, again, one of those guys. He chose a different route. He went the BC Hockey League route. He went the college route. He played a year at Wisconsin and, was drafted in the first round and then went on to establish his pro career. So that kind of got me going. But things did change throughout the process. At the beginning, I'm kind of watching, recruiting, and then you get into the development part of it where you understand that these guys need more. They're asking for more. I want to help them. I want to help them be the best players they can. So the development part of it became a really big thing for me. And then, several years later, as you got kind of a group of players that are good players, I decided that I want to get certified by the National Hockey League Players Association and, become a certified agent. I've it's maybe about 8 years ago, something like that I've been doing that ever since and still doing all of the same things. You're working with your pro players, you're working with your college players, you're working with your junior players. And, now you're back kind of at that Bantam level and you're working with families and helping them understand the process. And, it's about 20 years into this thing now. And I think I've got a lot of information to give people. And, I'm more than willing to help anybody out for sure.
Awesome. No, that's great. What is just from the professional side of what you're talking about? So it sounds like at the beginning there, when you're finding Blake or finding Kyle, you're not a certified agent, correct?
Correct.
So you identified these players and then was it kind of the group then that would represent them as opposed to you individually or what does it matter whether you are or you aren't certified, I guess? What does that mean?
I think at the time, Jason, I would say to me, it didn't really have any bearing because I wasn't sure the direction that I was going to go with this. And the guy that I worked with, Kurt Overhard, he was really good about making sure that I was involved in everything, the whole process, whether it was contract negotiation, all of that stuff. So that part of it was that I'd find the players, we'd work with them, we'd work with their family, they'd make the transition at some point in being pros and signing a contract at the NHL level and then also a contract with us. So, at that part, I didn't really think about it. Now I understand it. There's, the landscape of the hockey landscape has changed significantly. If you go back 5 years or go back 10 years and, let alone the 20 years ago when they started this. And, Kurt has these statistics that he brings out. I don't know the specific numbers, but he talks about when he got in the agent business, how many guys were actually certified agents compared to now, how many certified agents are. It's exponentially, crazy, the growth in the industry. And then each one of these agencies has a group of guys that kind of, go around and recruit players and families and that type of thing. So I understand that process. I guess from a professionalism standpoint, that was one of the reasons that I made the transition into becoming a certified agent, because I wanted to make sure that they knew that I was working to find the particulars that could help them. I was involved with a group that had a legal background and certainly an experienced background, and it certainly helped me get my feet on the ground and get going. And now I'm able to use that myself the same way that I was. And I have a couple of younger guys that are working with us now that are doing the same thing. And I make sure that I'm involved with all of their guys to make sure that they're getting, the best treatment that I think that they deserve.
Right. Perfect. With a guy like Blake, how did you go about finding him when he sounded like he was at an age where maybe he should have already been found? Had he just not made a decision at that point, or what was the story with him?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because you got to, if you're going back, years and years, it probably wasn't unusual just before players entered the Western League that they actually had somebody that they were working with. It is unusual now, yeah. but it wasn't then. I actually went to it was a Max tournament. I went to the which is one of the best tournaments. I can tell you that when I don't go, which is right after Christmas, I miss it. It's a really interesting, cool tournament. The environment is very good. It's very rich in hockey and atmosphere, and I encourage anybody to go and spend some time there at that Max tournament. But I saw Blake play, and I watched this kid, and I'm like, there's something to the kid, and then I have a conversation with Kurt, who he's obviously the agent at that time, and he reaches out to the family, and that's kind of how it it kind of evolved from there. Yeah.
Gotcha. What you talked about, you had two now. You're two of the first guys you identified when one went junior, one went major junior. That's a question that comes up all the time, and I'm sure you feel that all the time as well. Both produce players. I think the college level produces more players now than it ever has. So, I mean, it's definitely competitive with major junior, and it seems like it's a really good place for players to go. Do you personally have a route that you prefer, or do you take everything just as an individual and what's best for the kid?
Yeah, I think what's best for the kid and the family is really probably the most important thing. There's some logistics with the Western League that maybe aren't part of the equation in the BC Hockey League, in that, say a kid from Vancouver or from the Okanagan, where we're from, maybe he gets drafted to a team in Saskatchewan or Manitoba, and that's quite the distance to be playing junior hockey, being away from home and maybe not being around your family environment. Where if they don't want to leave, there's 17 now, 18 teams, because Cranbrook has come on board in the BC Hockey League, where they can stay at home, even if it's relatively close. Maybe you're playing in West Kelowna and you're from Abbotsford. You get on the road. Yeah, if the roads are good, maybe it's a 2 to 3 hour drive. You get to see your son play. You don't have to worry about planes and airports and all of that stuff. So I think that there's some good in each of them. There's also some uncertainty in each of them too. I think both of them do a really good job of trying to find ways to solve the uncertainty. But over time, I say, the question is, if I go with the BC Hockey League route or the Junior A route, what if I don't get a scholarship? That can happen. Happens a lot. You put all your eggs in one basket. This is where I'm going to go. I'm going to get a scholarship, and it may not happen. On the other hand, if you play in the Western Hockey League, you don't really know what you're getting out of that route either. They, in trying to solve maybe some of the issues that they have in the recruiting process, they've come out with a new kind of education package where they're able to offer kids that sign as 15-year-olds to a Western League agreement, 3 years of post-secondary education guaranteed. As long as you're playing hockey and you continue to play hockey as a 15, 16, and 17-year-old, you have that opportunity to use that accrued education money at some point when you go to school. So I do not particularly have one route that I think is better than another. I do think, sometimes you'll have a conversation and somebody will say, it's not that education isn't important to us as a family or important to my son, but maybe he doesn't feel like he's the best student, and this is why I think he wants to choose route A over B, those type of things. And you might get it the other way, where my son's a straight A student, he's a 4.0, and he wants to go to Harvard or something. So then that starts to open up the avenue that might be the best route for them. So it's interesting. There's nobody has that crystal ball that can say either way. take it upon myself and our group, and I know that we spend a lot of time, and sometimes to nauseam, and I'm saying that from the parents' point of view, because they probably think that, I've already had this conversation with them, I've already talked to them, but I want to make sure that it's clear and they understand, if they choose a junior A route, this is what can and can't happen, and if you choose the Western League route, this is what can and can't happen. And just so that they know, if they're a year, 2 years, or 4 years into it, they are completely aware of what those opportunities may or may not be.
Right. Yeah. And you can have all the information, and I always encourage everyone to do that. Ask the questions, where you're going, right? Who's there? What's the depth chart like? What's the coach like? What's the organization like? Like all these types of questions are super critical. But you never do know at the end of the day too. You just make the best choice that you can. I know personally, and I wonder if you guys think of this as from an agent standpoint. Well, I'm sure you do, but I was a 15-year-old in the BCJ playing for Penticton. And at the time, a very highly regarded prospect in the world of hockey. And as probably most guys my age in that position, I was like, well, I'm going to be in the NHL at 19, I thought, or maybe 20 at the latest. And then my next question was, well, if I'm going to get drafted from this league, I'm going to play in this league for 3 years. This will be my third year in this league, which I didn't think was a good thing, right? Like I wanted to be in the WHL because I thought that was going to be more exposure, better competition, higher draft pick, this, that, and the other. I mean, not that it didn't work out, I wouldn't say, but it would be interesting to see that other side of it, because the development, you have a little bit longer runway.
For sure.
With the college side, right?
Yeah.
But it is hard. That is hard to, there's not many guys that get drafted really high from that league. If you had like a real high prospect, to go in the top 10 from the BCJ is quite rare. There's the odd exception, but WHL is usually a little bit higher regarded when it comes to those top guys. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think the league as a whole is scouted, I'll say more fiercely than the BC Hockey League. I think the BC Hockey League's like, it's the afterthought. Like if there's like a player that people know is a good player in the BC Hockey League, the NHL scouts need to go and watch that player and watch him. But are they going out, and watching every game to see who those guys are the same way they would in the Western League? That just doesn't happen. And that's not their fault. It's a numbers thing. Is you're thinking of maybe a Friday, Saturday, Sunday set. Well, how many games can you get to? If I go to the Western League, like you say, there might be in two teams, there might be 8 guys that are draftable players that people are going to have notes about and have some information. In the BC League, there might be 2, maybe even 1, right? But I mentioned Kyle Turris was the 3rd overall pick in his NHL draft. But what that does is it forces all those NHL teams to come out and pay attention to the league, and other guys get a benefit from that too.
Yeah. Like
you said, though, it's just there's not enough of them on a regular basis, maybe to draw the attention or the same attention from the NHL.
Well, and that's just the inability to project too, which I know scouts are supposed to be great at. But how does that guy project in the WHL? How does he project at the NHL level, right? Because it is a little bit of a different league. I had the privilege of playing with Paul Correa the year I was there as a 15-year-old, and we know he went 4th overall and was obviously ended up being a Hall of Famer. But that was interesting at the time. Guys loved him. He's had 130 points, I think, in like 45 games in that league. Ended up, crushing it in Maine as well, and was obviously the real deal. But there was the questions at the time. He's a small guy. He's quick. Can he do this at a different level? And it's hard to be that good and still go that high. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I would love to be able to do both. My personal thing, and I've said that on this podcast before, is that I really wish they change it at some point where you can play WHL games and still get a college scholarship. Like why that has to be in there, I have no idea who that. It doesn't make sense to me. Like it just really, it's a hard decision to make at 15 years old for these parents and for these players, right? Like, yeah,
no, these kids are 14 turning 15, and you get a Western League contract put in front of you, and it is a really tough choice because again, you don't know, what that result may be. And I use the analogy, the runway as well. Like the runway is quite a bit shorter in the Western Hockey League. You're right, though, the exposure is higher. I think the level of play in general is higher because there are more better players that play at that level. and it doesn't mean that everybody that plays in the Western Hockey League is a great player. And I remember when, my brother Dave came back, and he was working with Colorado at the time, and he wanted to go to a game in Kamloops. And I just said, hey, I'm just letting you know, so before you go there, just because it's the Western League doesn't mean that everybody's a stud on those teams, right? And he's, but that is the reality. People think that it might be. And then you go there and you realize, but there's more better players like in that league. And there's another thing too, in that at the Western League level, there's only 320s on every team. In the BC Hockey League, there's 620s on every team. So the league is a little bit older, at the BC Hockey League level. I will tell you a bit of a pet peeve of mine is Hockey Canada changed the rules a number of years ago when it comes to the import and the status of an import and who is an import into, say, BC, which is, I think it's widely known as the best junior A league in Canada for NCAA scholarships, statistically, I'm sure. But back when you were a young guy and you're 15 and you're playing, there was, I think, a development part of the structure of the league to bring in, say, 15-year-olds like you and 16-year-olds and bring these guys on and mentor them, and they're going to be better as 16 and 17 and 18 years old, and the league has a chance to grow. If you look at the number of 16-year-olds that are in the BC Hockey League now, there's not very many. And the reason is that, a kid finishes high school in Ontario right now, he can take a lateral and just come right to BC and play as long as he's done school. He's not an import anymore. Back when you played, he would be considered an import, and you were restricted to how many imports you could have. So as a coach, if you're trying to win a game, and you've been around this, do you win more games with older veteran players, or do you win more games with the younger kid? Mm-hmm. Generally, it's the older kid, unless he's like a Paul Correa or a Kyle Turris or something. But so now you look at it and say, maybe there was one or two guys that would make a team. Now there's maybe one every 3 or 4 teams, which it bothers me, because I think it does affect the development of, say, even like BC kids and, kids that are grinding it out and playing and just, I want an opportunity. I think I can play at that level. But you got to remember there's other players coming in that may be older and more mature and, maybe have a better chance of taking a spot there.
Yeah, well, that was a big decision for us, because I remember that was the decision. Whether we were going to play in Vernon, and I mean, Vernon's kind of been the same perennial kind of franchise for quite a while now, and they were at the time too. That was right when Dave had pretty much just been through. They'd won their first championship, and Mel List was running the show there, and they kept. I mean, they wanted to keep winning, right? And like you just said, so I mean, they would usually add to the lineup in the second half of the season. They'd bring in more older guys again, and kind of rev up for the playoffs. And Mel wanted me to play that year, but we kind of looked at the history and was just like, well, maybe I might be on the outside looking in here potentially at the end of the year, right? And then Gary Davison in Penticton, who's he's still involved, and he's with
love Gary.
Great guy. He was the coach and GM then, and he was just really straightforward and honest, and just said, no, you're going to have a place here. I mean, we're not going to do that here. Like, he was a little bit wired differently, like you said. He was more about development. We felt comfortable there, and he held true to his word. I mean, I scored 20 goals there as a 15-year-old, and I think I helped the team. But he put me in a position where I was able to keep playing. But that was the choice that we had to make, right? Like, where do we think we're going to have a better chance? And that was a really good precursor for me to get to the WHL, for sure. I mean, that league was it's a good league. It's a really good league, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a good stepping stone, as opposed to coming from minor hockey into there as a 16-year-old, be able to play BCJ against 21-year-old men, right, that are trying to break your face, and and then what's going on once you get to WHL. But you talked about development and that being a really big key to what you're about. You mean everyone? Well, maybe it's obvious to me because I've been through it, but I mean, you guys don't get paid unless somebody signs a contract. So, I mean, finding these guys as bantams, you're investing a lot of time and probably a lot of money, I assume, with what you're doing with these guys to get them ready to be able to sign a contract. I mean, the development aspect is just as important for you as an agency as it is for an NHL team with their prospects. How do you go about doing that, developing these guys? What's the process?
Well, it is a long process, as you said. I mean, kids are drafted. The 2005s were just drafted this year. And you look at it's 3 years. They're 3 years removed, depending on their birth dates, to being drafted into the NHL, where their first opportunity that they would have to be drafted at the NHL level. And then there's obviously the development after you get drafted. So the time frame is long. I think it's more of conversations. It's identifying certain things about players. I will tell you, 5-10 years ago, I'm looking at maybe different things then than I am now. And part of it is the direction that the game is going. The speed of the game, you can't deny it. It's quick, it's fast. You got to be able to think and play the game at a really furious pace. And I don't see that changing. So, it sounds obvious to say you're looking for skaters and then you're trying to help people become better skaters. But everybody should be working on their skating, pro guys down. It's just the way it is. If you're not, somebody else is. So I think it's the idea of kind of identifying each player and then trying to figure out what they need. Some guys need to be, there's some time they're going to put on some maturity, some physical strength, and it might take 2 or 3 years. They might be behind lots of guys that are maybe just naturally physically more mature. But you see something in them and you continue to work with them and you're trying to figure out a way that you can help them, not fast track it, but make sure they're on track. And I will tell you it's a huge thing. Like, Dave, my brother Dave and I, we have these conversations all the time. He's got a couple of young boys. And I talk about like opportunities. And as you make the adjustment, you say, I've been drafted in the Western Hockey League. Well, what's the next opportunity? It might be major midget. It might be a U18 midget prep team or something. The sooner that you can make the adjustment to whatever that opportunity is, the better chance you're going to have to succeed. There's no gray area there for me. So if you look at it and you say, well, I'm going into this, if I'm, smaller, weaker, but I can still think. I'm not, you can't take that away. But if I never have the puck because physically I can't get to the puck or I can't keep the puck, well, then I'm behind the 8 ball all the time. So if I look at it and say, the quicker that you can physically put yourself in a position to compete and compete at whatever that level is. You're not a kid that's drafted out of Bantam that's going to play midget. He's not competing at the NHL level, but he's still got to make sure that he's physically ready to compete the next year. Because the next year, these guys that play U18, there's kids that are 2 years older than them. So what is the difference? If I go there and it takes me, 6 months and the season's over and I just start getting on track, a lot of guys that were more physically ready, maybe they get the accolades. Now, there's lots of time to do it, and everybody kind of physiologically is different. So you can't necessarily fast track, but I like them to at least think this is what I need to do in order to be successful. So it's not specifically a weight thing, but it is a traction thing. So, for example, a player might be drafted and he says, well, he's 160 pounds. He's 5'11" and 160 pounds. I'm like, that's fine. I've had guys that played in the BC Hockey League at 6 feet, 150 pounds, were drafted, into the NHL at that weight. It's fine. But what's the goal here? So you start to set some increments that you need to get to this in order to make that next step. So that's a huge thing for me. And it also shows me how dedicated, how consumed they are with trying to be better. So, I can't emphasize that enough. I see it over and over. You see the kid at Bantam and he's physically bigger, but he might just have grown, early, and he's dominant because he's physically able to hang on to pucks, and this skinny guy can't. He's there and he makes plays, but he can't break through. It's okay. But you better be working on it. You better be thinking, I need to close that gap. And I see it over and over. Well, over the next 2 years, as long as you make the commitment to do it, you start to close that gap and you'll pass that gap.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's part of, I guess you guys are technically part of the scouting community, because you need to identify talent too and project talent just as much as the WHL scouts do. And the better you are at that, the more often you get paid. And I think that's the differentiator, is understanding when you look at a kid who's 14, is he dominant because of the physical assets that he has that are maybe happening earlier than somebody else, right? Is he really more skilled? Is he really a better skater? Or is he just bigger and stronger? Because a lot of times that changes in 3 or 4 years, right?
100% it does.
Yeah.
The next 2 to 3 years after that draft, there's a complete kind of changing of the playing field, because that guy that was like a beast of a young man when he was playing at 14, he didn't shrink, but his peers grew.
Yeah.
You know, they started getting physically taller and stronger, and all of a sudden now all of those skills that they have, now they're able to kind of shine through, and maybe that guy has a difficult time. Now, occasionally that kid, he's also got the skills too, and he can continue on and be a good player. But I do think that if you look at it and say, in order to continue on the trajectory that I want to be a good midget player the next year, I want to make a transition into playing junior, I better be preparing myself for it. Because those days of time and space on the ice, and I can, look back and think, when my brother was a junior and probably, you were just after him, there seemed to be tons of time and space on the ice, even at the junior A level. Now there's not. Why? Because there's more better players that are faster. They don't have to be all terribly skilled, but they can cover the distance in a really short period of time, which makes your job as a goal scorer, if I have the puck and somebody's in my face all the time, there's just not as much room to make the play that I want to make. Yeah. So you got to be able to do it all. And if you can make that transition physically and you have the skills, you're in a pretty good spot.
Sure.
And ultimately, that's what we're looking for.
There was one interesting thing I saw from last year's draft. I haven't had a chance to break down this year's draft yet, but it was judging the draft by date of birth. And it was, my percentages aren't going to be accurate, don't hold me to me, but it was something like 40% of the draft was drafted in the first 3 or 4 months of the year. Like 40% of the players taken were January through March or April birthdays. Right. And then if you looked at the last quarter, like October, November, December, it was like 2% of the players taken in the draft were from those birth months, which blew me away, because it's exactly what we're talking about, right? Like a lot of these guys are standing out because they're older and physically more mature. Right. And it's at that exact age where guys are going through puberty and getting bigger. And so a lot of these younger guys are getting left behind, but
100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a note to the guys that are listening right now, like that the scouting community is only doing what they're seeing right now, and they're trying to do the best that they can, but, they're guessing and, give yourself some time. If you're a guy that's a little bit smaller, a little bit, skinnier, like that does a lot for you on the hockey ice when you start filling out and filling into your body, and it will happen. So. No,
I agree with that 100%. And, you really can't get caught up in it. Like I would say, when you talk about scouting, like an NHL scout is going to watch, say, a major junior, a junior A, or a college game, and they're watching these players, like they're way closer to being men, and they have a tough time. Yeah. So then you look at it and say, well, you've got all these guys covering, these cold rinks, dark, dank rinks somewhere in Western Canada for the Western League. And, you look at it and say, well, now this guy's expected to look at his 14-year-old and see where, he's going to be. I don't think that there's any tougher scouting job on the planet, for sure, when it comes to hockey, than a Western League scout. Because you remember in the O and the Q, they're drafting players a year older than they are in the Western Hockey League. So I just think, like, these guys are up against it. They're going to be wrong way more than they're right, and it's really not their fault. Because you go into a room and say they got 10 scouts and everybody's pounding their fists on the table saying, hey, Johnny's the best. And some guy might be in the corner thinking, well, this other guy's, he's so skilled. Like, I think we should take this guy, but Johnny's just crushing him every time he's on the ice. Like, it's old school, and these guys are going to take that bigger, stronger guy almost every time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't want to spend too much time there, but do you know why the WHL picks a year earlier? Like, it seems to make absolutely zero sense.
I don't know. It's obviously been going on for decades, and we have these conversations every year. This year with the COVID-19 thing and all the hockey being suspended, there's a couple guys in the hockey community that, from a Western League perspective, said maybe this might be the year that they should have made that transition and gone to the year older, because there is no U16 stuff going on. So right. The U16 used to be like a big bearing. These guys would go to, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and watch these guys that last time to see them up against the best players from your province and see them. Well, it didn't happen this year, but, obviously it's not gonna change overnight, and I don't really see it changing for a while for sure.
Right. That might be, well, there's two things I want to hit on. One is, like we talked about, we've been focusing on the physical development and the physical growth and maturity, uh, which, like you say, is a little bit more, it's come to fruition a little bit more at that 18-year-old level, but it still hasn't even quite yet. I mean, a lot of guys will fill out later, 21, 22, like they hit their kind of man strength ages a little bit later than some other guys do. But how about the physical, I mean, the emotional and the psychological maturity? Like, that's another scenario that I think at 14, like these guys are just starting to figure that out. Again, at the next level, at an 18-year-old, a little bit more, matured that aspect, but not fully, so it's like now you're bringing that element in. And I know you guys worry, well, I shouldn't say worry is the wrong word, but I know you guys focus on that a little bit, the emotional and psychological side. How big of a deal is that, do you think, to becoming the best hockey player you can be?
I think it's huge. You can't emphasize enough kind of the mental part of the game, the stepping stones that you got to get over, coaches and teams and drafts and general managers and peers and teammates and, all of those things that ultimately are always put in front of you. What do you do? What do you do with it? And this is where, like, I use, my brother as an example, and I hope I was a good mentor for him when he was going through it and dealing with it at the junior level and the college level and the pro level, because I'm having those same conversations with kids that are 14 and 15 and talking them through things, and we can you want to leave a conversation, I always say, with some light at the end of the tunnel. But at the same time, there's these huge obstacles, and we got to figure out a way for that player to get beyond it. And I tell guys all the time, and I tell the parents this too, I know you think it's a really tough time right now, but I'm going to tell you the big picture, what I believe is the big picture. This tough time that we're going to go through right now is going to help you in a huge way in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. Because the coach that isn't playing you, the coach that's sitting you in the stands, the coach that doesn't put you on the power play, all of those things are irritating, and they grind you and they drive you down. How strong are you? Are you able to overcome that? Because you're not going to have this coach for the rest of your career, maybe not even the rest of your junior and minor hockey career. But ultimately, if you can use that, you're going to be put in a position like this as a pro. The best players in the National Hockey League, the people talked about the Sidney Crosbys of the world, like somehow it was like easy for him. It's not. Like, there's always these things that happen along the way, and you use these personal experiences, these tough times, to kind of figure out a way to get through it. And they're life skills too. It's not just for hockey, but ultimately, those are the kind of the mental things that happen. It's like you're a good player, and then all of a sudden somebody pulls the rug out from under you. What do you do? I know for sure, like, some people, they can't understand it. The parents don't understand it, and they're maybe more inclined to quit than kind of keep going, keep persevering and get through it. Sometimes you just have to have that conversation and try to find a way. Yeah. But it's never ending, as you know from playing the game. You can score 3 goals in one game and feel like you're on top of the world, and then you don't score for 5 games and you think, oh my God, like, what am I going to do now? I can't score. That's the nature of the game, and you got to find a way through it. Yeah. And then at some point there's a coach or a GM or a teammate, they're maybe holding you accountable, but they've taken you off the power play. You got to find a way. The tough mental part of that game, if you can find a way to get through it, you can use it for the rest of your life in many different ways, but certainly in the game of hockey for sure.
Right. Thanks so much. Just going to take a short break here and just remind everyone to please review and share the podcast. That is the ultimate way to help grow this thing, is your word of mouth and by you leading digital reviews. So if you like the content, if you like what you're hearing, please take the time. It doesn't take long, and share the episode or review the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Now back to the interview. Right. Yeah. I mean, I love what you're talking about there, because not only do I believe it, but I mean, that's one of the things that I teach. And I believe that stuff can be taught, like I think that the science out there, is one, pointing a picture. I mean, pointing you where to go and even how to do it. And a lot of these guys, parents included, like, are so focused on the physical element that they're forgetting that aspect of it. Like, how you approach a problem is something that you can actually learn and something that you can
Right.
practice, like you're saying it without saying it right now. And it's like that power play is a perfect scenario, right? Like, a lot of people and a lot of players will look for what's wrong with that scenario, right? What the problem is. The coach doesn't like me. He doesn't think I'm good enough. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here. And all these thoughts start happening with that scenario, as opposed to asking yourself, hey, what's good about this? Or where's an opportunity in here for me to show the coach? Where do I need to get better, right? Like, so it's the same
Right.
experience, but you're training yourself to look at it from a point that's going to empower you, not disempower you, right? And boy, I mean, that is such a powerful spot you can get in. And when you can get these guys thinking like that, I mean, you start overcoming these things, and it's not as much of a grind. It's still hard, but it's not as much of a grind,
Well, I agree with that 100%. And what you're doing is you're adding something to yourself personally. Like, personally, you're able to kind of add a building block that you need at some point in your life. And if you get enough of those blocks that you're putting in there, like, these are things that I'm going to use at some point in my life. But maybe I'm not able to use it the way I think I want to be able to use it now. But I'm having a conversation. Maybe they're having a conversation with me as an advisor or as an agent, and saying, this isn't the worst thing. We just have to find a way. You still have to find a way to get better. You have to find a way to get through this. There's 6 months left in the year. There's 2 months left in the year, whatever it is. You got a great summer ahead of you, but we're going to use this. You're going to use this the next year and the year after. You guys start to kind of maybe change that focus on, this is such a negative thing. But I'm sure that, you in your career, you've kind of been through some stuff where it's like, it seems like whether there's a person, a team, something going that wants to tear you down. They're just tearing you down. They're tearing you down. And that's life. You could be a ditch digger, or you could be a doctor, and there's still people out there that may be approaching you in the same way. So from a personal skills standpoint, if you can figure it out and you can weather the storm and understand that you've gotten better because of it, I just think it's infinite what you can use for your career and your life after that, for sure.
And it's something that organizations are actually attracted to. The guy that through those scenarios does not only like keeps himself on an even keel, but makes other people around him better. I mean, nobody wants that guy in the room that's just excuses and down on himself and whoa me, right? Like, that's not serving you in that aspect either, because it's a team sport at the end of the day, and sometimes we forget about that when things aren't going well, right? We're really worried about ourselves, and that's not serving you as where you want to get to at all.
100%. And I'll go even one step farther from a parental standpoint, is that in this game, and maybe in life in general, but certainly in this game, there's no room for poor me. No room. And parents have to understand that too, because when player X doesn't get on the power play or doesn't get on the penalty, it's like, it's poor me, poor John. He's getting screwed by the coach. He's getting screwed, whatever it is. If you're having that conversation with your kids, they start to believe it. And once you start to believe it, you're almost kind of blocking yourself from getting better, because they believe that you can't get over this. My parents are basically throwing in the towel by saying it's poor me. And I've had parents that have said, well, I don't say that in front of my son. And I go, well, you shouldn't say it at all. The reality is that you have to find a way, and the players that find a way usually they certainly have a much better chance of succeeding. But I've seen this, Jason, in my career, where I've gone up and watched a junior game where a really good player, and he's missed one shift on the power play, and I've been after the game, and his parents he'd come up and say, well, why did you miss that one shift? Like, they saw that one shift that they missed. And they said, well, coach didn't think I worked that hard. And I've seen the guy throw up his hands and go, oh, you're getting screwed, And I'd be like, you got to be kidding me here. Like seriously, first of all, take that outside. He doesn't need to hear that. But I will tell you, like, if the kids hear it enough, they start to believe it. And it isn't about getting screwed. It's just life isn't fair. It's just not. And if you have this, I line up and everybody told me I was the best guy, and I find out now that I'm not the best guy. You're not getting screwed. Work to be the best guy again. Right. And I could, like, there's stories. I remember a kid that was a really highly touted Bantam player, first round draft pick in the Western Hockey League. And he went, when he made the transition to play a midget, the first thing the guy says to him, the coach, is that I'm not going to put you up on a pedestal like all your other coaches have. How would he know that they all put him on a pedestal? Like, he didn't. And the kid's like, I'm 15 years old. Like, I just want to play the game, I wasn't thinking about any pedestals here, right? But at the end of the day, like, he's that good that he just keeps working. And it's not like the guy's holding him back, but to make that statement, I think, is, the kid could have gone, well, I guess I'm going to get screwed here, and just kind of said, well, it's not going to work. But he didn't. He just looked at him and thought, this guy's crazy, but I'm just going to keep working hard. And for sure, he's running the power play and the whole bit, obviously, as the course of the season goes on. And he's playing in the Western League. He's playing his 15-year-old games. He's playing as a 16-year-old. Why? Because he's good. He's just really good. Even though somebody had to go out of their way to tell him, I don't think you're as good as maybe everybody else said you were. Right. But he didn't say I'm getting screwed. He just said, hey, if this guy doesn't love me, I'm just going to work harder. And he did.
Yeah, well, that's a mindset thing. And I think what you were saying there before, and it's crazy you're saying that, because it's exactly what I've been saying. I'm in my Mindset 101 training that I talk about. I talk about, like, your idea or your meaning of the experience. So you're saying, like, the parents are saying you're getting screwed, or, this is a big problem and you're a victim essentially in this scenario, right? When you start thinking those things, it leads to different thoughts, which leads to different feelings, which leads to different actions, right? What type of actions are you going to be taking in that scenario, right?
Exactly, right.
And then what kind of results are you going to get? So you get shitty results too, and then which then manifests it creates the whole scenario again. You're like, yeah, I told you so. See, I was getting screwed.
Yeah.
Right. So like you say this, you get caught in this loop that completely doesn't serve you, and it really is the meaning that you gave to it in the first place. So like we are in control, and the parents totally either help or hurt that process. And anyone you surround yourself with, I say to these young guys, like, be very careful about what you're hearing and who you're surrounding yourself with, because it becomes contagious. And you want to be thinking the right things, because it's hard enough, man. It's hard enough without thinking the wrong thing.
It is hard, and there's, being around other kids and other parents, you see different things as well. And if there's any advice, I would say in the hockey environment. And the hockey environment is when you're dropping you drive your kids to the game, and you're at the game. You could be at the end of the rink. You could be waiting for them in the lobby. You're in the hockey environment, and in that environment, if your son's not getting on the power play, or he's not getting, it's that stiff upper lip. Just be a good parent. Be supportive of your kid. Good job, Johnny. You worked really hard. And then when you get home, it's not about the ride home. About again, the whole getting screwed and stuff. You maybe have a conversation and say, hey, what do we need to do to get better? Right. Just what do we need to do? Like, let's not worry about that issue that is manifesting. And 9 times out of 10, it's manifesting way more in the parent than it is in the kid. But the parents can't control themselves. They get in the car and they have to talk about it on the way to the game. They got to talk about it on the way home to the game. And I just love your kid. Like, love your kid. Hey, you worked really hard. He had some good chances. Give him some time to digest. Give him a meal when he gets home. What do we need to do to get better? Yeah. Right. That's all. And then, like, he might tell you, hey, you know what? Like, I guess maybe I need to go shoot some more pucks. I have some opportunities, but I didn't put them in the net. I need to. You start talking about the structure of what you can do, rather than just saying, this isn't going to work.
Right. 100%. You have to empower your player, whether you're a parent or whether you're an agent or whether you're a coach, right? You have to show a potential for a solution. As soon as you start talking about blocks and about problems and about, then you're a victim, and now it's out of your control, and now you're defeated. So, don't tell them what's wrong as a parent. I say that all the time. Ask them what you said, how do you get better? What can you do that's right? How is this working for you? Right? Like, what do we got to do? Those are better questions. I want to touch on the whole, like what you talked about with the under 16 scenario. And this year I looked at the draft and it looked to me very, very, very academy driven, more so than normal. Do you think that the lack of that last hurrah there at the provincial level gave the minor hockey kids less of an opportunity to showcase against these academy kids?
Yes. Yes, I do. And they would tell you that too, that it's the nature of the beast in that from a scouting perspective, all of these Western League scouts would tell you that the majority of games that they have seen would be the CSSHL games. And it's no disrespect to them. They put it in a pretty neat package in that they have some really good events as far as these tournaments and stuff that these guys go to. And these other teams are at these tournaments too. But then it's like you said when it comes to the BC Hockey League and the Western League. I'm trying to compare apples to apples, but the apples aren't the same. They're not. They're different. So if I can watch, say, two good teams, I can watch Yale and Delta Green play. They're like two of the better, Bantam Prep teams. I'm going to go watch, and almost every one of those players is going to be draft eligible. Almost every one of them. Now on Sunday, there's a major bantam, which is a fairly new thing in BC. I'm going to go watch a major bantam game, and it might be in Vancouver. It's really close. It's convenient the whole bit. But at the end of the day, there might be only 6 guys that are draft eligible. They're all draft eligible that are second year. But in their mind, they're already the preconceived notion is that there's a high probability that the most of them aren't going to be drafted.
Right.
And so how much are you investing into that? How much are you investing into the drafting? And then again, when you go into the boardroom and everybody's banging fists and stuff on the table and saying, who do we like? It's going to be predominantly the CSSHL players for sure, because they've played at a level that is really high, consistently high throughout the year. So, and I do believe that it's wrong. Like, I do think that there's kids that, played the different levels of bantam hockey. Obviously the major bantam, the zone bantam. I think if they're given the same level of attention, yes, maybe the competition's different, but if you're looking at this from, hey, listen, I'm watching the players, I'm watching them skate, I'm watching them move, I'm watching them think, I'm watching them compete, it doesn't keep you from saying, I like that player. And to be completely candid with you, we had that exact same thing happen for us this year, where I went to a Bantam tournament, the Pac-Quinn tournament, which is down in Vancouver at Christmas time. And, I've obviously seen all of the CSHL players, most of them that came out. There's a big tournament in Abbotsford at the beginning of October. But now I'm going here, and there's 2 kids that I'm watching that are playing on this major Bantam, and I like them. And I like them a lot. So, I got to watch them. I got to bring my colleagues out, and I got to say, like, listen, I want you to watch these guys. They're not playing against the best competition like these, but they're good. And then those teams get invited, because they're good teams, to go and play against these other teams like the Delta Greens and stuff. And do they win? No. Are the games close for the first 30 minutes? Usually they are. Do they get kind of crushed at the end and lose by 6 to 8 goals maybe? Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. But you can still see that good player. You can still see whether he's competitive. You can still see if he can skate and think and move a puck, even though he doesn't have the same group around him to play with. And we are working with 2 of those players for that specific reason, because I believe they both got drafted in the Western League draft here, last week. But ultimately, if they weren't drafted, I'd be okay with it as well. I am. It's like you believe in what you see, and then going to maybe your topic earlier. What are you going to do to help these guys develop so that over the next 2 to 3 years they're going to catch those guys that were drafted in the first round or the second round or the third round?
It just makes it tough. From the parent standpoint, like I told you earlier, like a lot of the people that are listening are parents here, and then there's this anxiety about, do I need to mortgage my house, to get into these academy programs? Because they're not cheap, right? So it's an expensive league to play in, and and the proof is in the pudding. It seems like, and again, it's unfortunate because this year more so than other that more of these kids got drafted than even usual, which even is a stronger indicator that you need to be there to get recognized. I hear from what you're saying, though, it sounds like you actually do believe like there's a big divide from the academy program to like the top minor hockey provincial program. Which what would you say that league is like with the Okanagan Rockets and like
the Major Bantam League? Well,
the Major Bantam League,
U15, I think they'll call it this coming year because they're
right.
changing all the monikers. But do I think
there is that big of a divide? Hey,
it's well, first of all, you got to remember that the academies all recruit teams. Like it's not a junior team or a college team, but they're recruiting teams. They have tryouts. They bring guys in and they say, hey, this guy's good. They always fill the roster with guys that are willing to pay that money that you're talking about. But generally there's going to be, I would be surprised if there's not 6 to 10 really good players on each one of those teams, based on the fact that they have to try out and to participate in those teams.
Right.
Yes, the tryout thing is they have a tryout for Major Bantam and all of that stuff too. But I think the level is different. But I'm not against the level being different either, because there's other things that it forces you to do. Your question about should you mortgage the house and put $30,000 into an academy if you could play Major Bantam and have a really good year, meaning you get lots of puck touches, lots of ice time. You get to go to some of these tournaments. You might not get to go to the best ones, but there's other ones too that are at least equally challenging. Like NAX puts a big tournament on the same way that there's a big Bantam tournament in Edmonton, the John Reed tournament. It's a great tournament, but at the same time, NAX, which is an academy team, they put on a tournament as well, and some would consider that to be maybe a second-tier tournament. I look at it like it's a second opportunity to watch players, and I will tell you that we've got players out of that tournament the last 2 years that we've gone to that tournament, just basically because we get a chance to see them play. And they might be, Major Bantam teams. They might be E15. Like even in the academies, there's a kind of a lesser teams in those leagues too. So there's different layers that you get to see. But
yeah, I mean, that provincial level at the end of the year too, I think is a good equalizer, and probably a lot of people rest their laurels on that okay, we'll see the best guys from the minor hockey system here at the end of the year, right? We'll see them apples versus apples, and then that's kind of, so you're letting I shouldn't say you're letting, but the assumption is we're letting somebody else do that work to identify those top guys. Now we're going to bring them in and we're going to see them against these other top guys, and that's where they'll, the pecking order will be determined, which makes total sense. And that's why I kind of feel bad for these guys this year that didn't have that opportunity, because there's a lot of good players in that Major Bantam League that, one, for instance, and I don't know if you ever saw him, but like for the most outstanding player, Addison C, I never saw him play, but I mean, he led the league in points. It's a good league. Kid doesn't get drafted. Like there was an article on him in a local paper. Thought he was maybe going to go be a high pick and just didn't even get taken. Like to me, that's amazing. Like, and crazy. Like either that league is awful or like it just wasn't watched enough.
For sure it wasn't watched enough, for sure. Because even when, there is the Vancouver Canadians that are, one of the teams in the league, and the Okanagan Rockets, two of the better teams, they get invited to go to these other tournaments because they're a good team. So because they've kind of established themselves at the top of that Major Bantam League, well, now they do want to see those guys against. So maybe the guys at the next level, maybe the next two teams and the next two teams, they're fighting it out amongst the group inside that Major Bantam group, and they don't get that extra level of exposure. But here's what I would say to that is that, again, remembering what we said earlier, the Western Hockey League, they're drafting these guys probably a year too young. That is a fact, comparative to, say, the other two, major junior leagues in Canada. A lot of stuff happens between that 14 and 15-year-old year. Like things are going to change again as these guys, start this fall and obviously end at this time next year. I think that there's a chance that this Major Bantam group would go. I really hope that it does, for exactly the reason that you said. Do I put $30,000 into an academy that I can't afford? Like, if you can afford it, then pay it. Nobody cares. Like, go. But if you're like, I'm going to mortgage the house so my son can play here, I think it's okay to play Major Bantam and okay not to be drafted.
Right.
Like, I just do. Like, you can't, if you're putting all your eggs into this basket of being drafted, and that's why I'm going there, I'm just telling you, it's the fruit that you're looking for is probably not there. And there's guys that are drafted or not drafted that get put on teams as list players. They get on. There's a kid last year, and he didn't play. He did play in the CSSHL, but he did not get drafted. And I watched this kid later, right after the NHL draft in Vancouver. I went out and watched this kid play, and I love this kid. And I probably saw this team play 10 times, and I'm like, how come I didn't see this kid at this level? And I literally beat it up. And then I met with him, and I challenged him a little bit. Then I went out and watched him play. But he wasn't drafted in the Western League. I think that this kid's going to be a really good player at some point, but he's got time to grow and develop and mature and get physically stronger. But all of these guys would have that same opportunity if you don't just hang your hat on, well, I put everything into this, and this, I came out with nothing. Because nothing is puck touches and skating and opportunity, and now what happens next year? And now what happens the year after that? So I get it. Like, the top guys, say the first 3 rounds of the Western League draft, these guys are all really good players, and they're going to make it. I'm telling you, from my experience, they're not all making it either. Yeah. So I tell guys, you look at your draft year and then go back 5 years. Go back to the Western League and look at the rosters of all of the teams and look to see how many guys that were drafted in the first round didn't play any meaningful games in the Western Hockey. How many guys in the second round? And then there's a guy that was drafted in the 9th round, and he played, 200 plus games, got drafted in the NHL, and he's already played 50 games in the NHL. Yeah. How bad do you want it? What are you willing to invest into it? So don't get caught up into it. But I understand the draw, but at the same time, you got to look at this and say, how's this going to impact me and my family for the rest of my life too? And what could I do with that money to help my son from a development standpoint if I just put, say, an extra $15,000 into my jeans and put $5,000 into skating and shooting and skill development and physical development? How much better would he be? I'm pretty confident. Maybe he's not playing at that same level, but there's still lots of room for development there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I talked to one WHL scout who said like the academy guys, he called them more polished. He said they're more polished at that age. Like, so they'll come out of those programs a little shinier. But it doesn't mean that they keep going there, like that. A lot of these guys that do play in these different programs end up catching them at some point, so you're getting a little more polished prospect early on. Doesn't always, mean that's the way it ends up at the end of the day. And that's what I say too. It's an ego thing really for parents, and it's an ego thing for players too. You want to get drafted, you want to get recognized. And you have to pay, sometimes you got to pay dollars for that. If you can get over that fact that really doesn't identify you or even categorize you as where you're going to end up when you're 16 or 17 years old at all, right? It's
right.
It's the actual, where are you playing, your puck touches, how what you're doing away from the rink, all these things. You will end up in the WHL if you're good enough to be there.
And even if you want to play in the Western League,
yeah,
like you said, there's a different runway. You just got to look at it and say, well, if I'm not getting all the love and attention, maybe there's another option. What do I do?
Yeah.
How do I continue on this journey and help myself be better? How do I, what am I going to do to challenge myself inside of whatever group that I'm on? So, like, whatever that current team is and whatever that direction is. I just think that there's enough. Like, one of the Western League guys said this to me as we talked about the guys that played in the major banner. Like, there's these 2 players that I'm talking about that we work with and help with some guidance. And he said to me, well, they'll really have to show, what they can do this next year, like this 15-year-old year, like, because now they're going to be. And I'm thinking, they still can't play in the Western Hockey League at 15. You still can't play in the BC Hockey League. Like, that's not even true. It's like, what do you need to do to get better? So, like, if the guys have a great year this year, and I tell guys, great year doesn't mean 30 goals and 30 assists. It means you played lots, you competed hard, you got some good instruction, hopefully, and if you didn't, you found it somewhere else. But you feel like at the end of the year that your game has gotten better. Okay, now what are you going to do? What's that next off season going to be like for you? The guys that invest into it, if there's just a different level of opportunity. You don't have to worry about whether or not somebody drafted me. You just don't. And there is a level of, I think, comfort in being a bit of a free agent too. As a young kid, I'm not like, you could be drafted by a team in Saskatchewan that maybe you don't want to go to, or maybe you're from Saskatchewan and you get drafted by a team in BC that you don't want to go to. Yeah. The reality is, if you're not drafted, I can be a free agent. I can kind of pick and choose. If somebody puts me on a list, I can tell them I have no interest in playing the Western Hockey League. I can tell you, you're probably not going to stay on that list for very long.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. When you guys are trying to identify players, or if parents are worried, about that scenario, like, do you go in with a number, like a quota, like we want to pick up X amount of guys this year? Is there a philosophy to how you do things, or is it just like who you like and try and create the relationship and see if it's going to work out?
There's absolutely no criteria for number. I think you do this long enough and you see certain things that's players kind of present when they're playing the game that you like, and sometimes you love, but sometimes there's things that you don't like, but you think, if I work with them, I think I can help them here. There's some guys that are outright, there's one thing that you like and it's going to be a really big project and it's going to be a long, but you like it enough that you're willing to kind of put the time and energy into it. I'm fortunate. I work with a really great group of guys, and these guys are out and they're doing their due diligence, and we kind of beat it up and talk about different guys and where they're at and stuff. But it's more of a feel. Like I'll watch the game, and if I see something and I know that maybe a colleague of mine is maybe recruiting a player on a team, and I'm like, well, listen, I would recruit this kid too, because I really like this kid. I think that he might be shorter and smaller and all of that stuff right now, but there's some intangibles there that I think that he's going to be a very good player moving forward. That's up to them if they want to take that road. And then there's other ones where I watch and it's like I see it, and you see something that that everybody doesn't have. And I can tell you again, it's the world that we're dealing with right now. The beginning of May, usually there's the U15 starts in Penticton. So all of the kids that would be first year Bantams or second year Bantams this coming year would go to this U15 thing. So all the 06s, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of them would go there. And I remember going there last year. I hadn't really been there that much, because at the time it kind of seems like you're getting ahead of the game a little bit, like with the ages and a lot of things changed and stuff. They haven't played any real meaningful games that you've seen. But I watched this kid last year, and I was just like, he is a big kid, size, strength, height, but it's not his size, strength, and his height that I loved, like how he processed the game and how he thought, and his puck touches and stuff. And I'm watching this kid, and I'm watching him more and more, and I picked up the phone after the thing, and I called his mom, and I'm like, I'm sure that people are going to call because your son is, he's a really big young man, but that's not why I'm calling. I just see some things that he does that other guys don't do. And I think with some direction, this guy, has a chance to be a player. So, they're on board and we're working with them in the whole bit, but I don't look at it like, okay, well, now I got to go get another one or get another player. It's a little bit organic in that, I get a lot of people that call me, a lot of people that, maybe want an advisor or want an agent, want information. I make sure that I let people, my job is as an agent, obviously I'm trying to find players that are going to help and guide and hopefully at some point be NHL players. I realize that it's statistically it's not going to happen for everybody, but I also know that there's not a lot of resources out there where people can pick up a book and say, well, now what? So I have lots of clients that call me and say, do you mind talking to so-and-so because their son, would like some information, and by all means, give them my number. And we have a conversation. A lot of times it ultimately leads to the question, well, how do I get you to work for me or with me? And I'm like, well, what I'm telling you right now is that you can phone me and I'll kind of beat up any kind of question that's going on. But I need to see, obviously, your son play and spend some time watching and kind of understanding maybe the direction that they're going is to take that to another level for sure.
No, and that's the way to do it. And I think, I wouldn't say this if I didn't think that you were in line with it, but I think people get caught up sometimes, and I speak from this from personal experience, in the ego side of the agent too. And not, I mean, your agency is 100% reputable and have tons of great NHL players and have been around a long time. But I remember when I was picking my agent, it was like Mike Barnett called me, who was Wayne Gretzky's agent and who had,
Right.
these other guys. And he took me to this, a playoff game that Gretzky was playing in, right, against Calgary. And
Right.
I mean, it was a done deal because because of who he was and what IMG was and who they had, right? And because I felt that the creme de la creme, I was with the creme de la creme, and it was just like, it was me feeling good about myself. Whereas a guy like Tom Laidlaw, who's been a guest on this podcast, was just getting going at the time. And by the way, Mike Barnett's a real good guy, and I still saw him and he was nice, but it was just different. He had way more guys. He had way bigger fish to fry, right? And Tom was just getting going, really good, down to earth, authentic guy. I really got along with him, but he was new and he wasn't the shiny penny. And I decided to go with Barnett and IMG, and it was a wrong choice. It really was at the end of the day, right? I was a guy who needed someone that would pick up the phone and call me, and, someone that I could talk to, and someone that was interested in me as a person, that had time. And I just say that now to my guys too. Like, pick the person, pick the guy you're talking to. Like, make sure you like him. Make sure that you got a relationship there, because one, you have to care about your guys, right? Like, there's a personal aspect to this other than just being a hockey player. You want to look forward to that phone call, and that player should want to look forward to it too, right? And I think when you have that at the starting point, I think you got a pretty good thing.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll go one step further. It's not just looking forward to the call from the player, but there's a relationship with the family, and kind of them understanding that they're part of this process. And I agree with you 100%. You never know what other people are thinking. Like, it's like, you're in a room or you're having a conversation or you're in a restaurant somewhere and you're having a coffee and you're talking about, what you do. And honestly, at the beginning, I didn't really know, how to present that, Jason, but I look at it now, I just present myself. I just tell people this is what I do. I work really hard. I work for my clients. If your son doesn't make it to the NHL, I'm still going to be involved in his life. If he calls me and says he's got a job in New York City because he graduated from college, and I'm like, it makes me just as happy to hear that as it does to say that he signed his NHL deal and he's playing the NHL now. It's just part of the relationship. So I love that, and I will tell you, like, one quick story. Ryan Johansen and his younger brother Lucas Johansen are clients of mine, and the family. He has just a phenomenal family. And I remember going and meeting his dad for the first time and sitting across, and I said, this guy's just he's a regular guy like me. I think he gets it. He understands. There's no, hey, my kids are the greatest kids ever, like, as far as hockey players. They need to work on some things just like everybody else does. And I have an incredible relationship with him. I love him like a friend. But he said something to me in choosing our group, and they had obviously all the big companies coming and banging down their door too. He said to me, Joe, he goes, I felt like I could always pick up the phone and call you. And he goes, I was pretty sure that some of these big guys, I wasn't going to get that. And I felt good, because I do feel that way about all of these guys. And there's a time when a kid, he's playing as a 19 and 20, and you're wondering, like I just want to make sure that he's got not even an NHL career, if that's not the direction, if that's not happening for him, but that we've got other things lined up and he is going to school and stuff like that. But I still look forward to his call. Like, when he called, and this is going on and we have a conversation, or his family calls me, I'm as equally happy to hear from them as I would. And that's the relationship that you have and the time that you spend with, not just with the player, but with the families too.
Right.
So it does mean something for sure.
No, well, good for you. I mean, you guys classify yourselves as a boutique agency, and there's not a definition of what that means, but I assume that means, you mean like you got a small group of guys and you do it on purpose so that it's not just a mass numbers thing and get as many people as you can and see what happens at the end of the day, right? Like you're actually focused on developing that person and that player, and because of that, you can only have a small amount of guys.
Well, it's accountability. It's like, you're sitting in a room and I'm talking to you about you and your son, or a parent and their son, and we're having a conversation. Number one, I have to believe it. I have to believe that I'm going to spend the time and work with you to help you, not just your son, but you and your wife and there's grandparents involved and the whole bit to help guide them, and so I believe that first. But I think that there's an execution part of it that you have to stand up and hold up, and that I'm very proud of, not just myself but the group that we have, because I do think that is first and foremost, is that you have this relationship and you work that relationship with them so that you are pulling on the rope in the same direction. So
Sure.
It's very valuable to me. Like I can't. Somebody asked me one time, what's the best part about this? What's the best part about being an agent and working with these guys? And like, there's so many different layers to what the best part would be. But I will tell you, it's the relationships that you have with these people. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal, and I look forward to it. But it also makes sure that I am accountable and I'm picking up the phone and I'm trying to do what I can to help these guys in any possible way.
Right.
Whether they're on the trajectory that they're still playing and they're making it to the National Hockey League, or he's going to go play in the Canadian college somewhere. It's important to me.
Well, it sounds like your organization as well has people, like you said, you've been in it now for 20 years, and even before that in hockey, right? You've been involved in hockey essentially your whole life. So there's a wealth of knowledge there. But if there's maybe something that somebody's asking you about that's not right in your wheelhouse, you have guys in the organization that you can say, well, hey, go call whoever, Kevin Bieksa, or pick up the phone. Kessler is probably who you should talk to for this. Like, I mean, you have this little infrastructure there that guys can turn to other people as well, correct?
No, that is 100% accurate, and I'm very candid with people, because I mean you have this experience. You work with people, you work with teams at the junior A level, the Western League level, the American League, the NHL level. But you know what? None of us has all the answers. But I just tell people, like, there's going to come something's going to come up. I will work to find that answer, and it might be some guidance from somebody that's played the game. It might be somebody that's some guidance that's coached at that level. But we're going to find that answer. We're going to put that in front of you. And it might be going back to an earlier conversation. It might be talking to somebody about mental health. It might be like, how do I get out of this? This is what's going on. What do we do? Hey, let's just sit down. Let's digest this a little bit. Okay. There's a lady that I know here that's, that type of thing. And I can tell you that that's part of trying to, kind of solve the daily issue, which might be going on. That like at the time, it's these mental things of, it might be really tough, but we got to find a way to get through it in order for you to kind of survive and get better and feel good about yourself as well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm a big advocate for preparing for something that you might not even know you have to prepare for yet. And I think that's one of the great things that an agency can do is prepare these guys for what's to come. Because, when you're I can use my own scenario again for as an example. Like my first professional trade at the trade deadline, my first year pro, was in the minor leagues after playing 19 games in the NHL. Got a phone call that I was traded to Toronto. New organization, new coaches, new players, new everything, right? Different league. And now all of a sudden go figure it out, and the message to me was, well, go work hard, like, here's your chance. And it was like, that was so, it happened like that. Right. But I could have been preparing for that You know, I could have been doing things. There was stuff that I could have done now that I know about now that I help my players with now that prepares you for stuff like that. Right. So it's tough when you're 17, 18, 19, you think you're bulletproof, right? Like
right.
everyone
You
thinks
know
they
it
got it
all.
all.
You got it all
Yeah,
figured
we
out.
got it all figured out. It's all good. Right. But it's like,
Right.
there's a way to connect with these guys that does get them ready. Cause they start thinking about things a little bit differently. And that whole development aspect is a big deal, which leads me to my next question, Joe, is, so you guys want to develop your players the best you can. You see your players on a day-to-day basis. You know them, not day-to-day, but you see them, you talk to them, you know what they're about. Now they get drafted by a WHL team. So now this WHL team has this vision for this player. They have their own development strategy potentially. Same thing will happen at the NHL level. Do you guys ever get into conflict, or do you guys try and have an agreement on what is best for this player moving forward? Or what's the relationship right with the teams once these guys get identified by somebody?
Well, I think first off, I think they're appreciative that we care about, what that development is, because they're going to be the ones that are going to benefit from this as well as the player. Yeah. That we do take an active role, and we are asking the guys who their trainers are and what they're doing and how they do it. Some teams kind of have a model. Unfortunately, in the training part of this, and I'm sure that you've been faced with this, is a bit of a cookie cutter approach. And here's our program. This is what we want you to do this summer. And yeah, I'm not saying they haven't put thought into it, and there's some really good stuff in there. But you've got guys that are 6'5" and guys that are 5'6". Are they doing the same things? They probably shouldn't be. And so there is an individual kind of part of this thing that we like to make, sure that people are aware of. I have had conversations with Western League teams, college teams, pro teams, just about what that looks like for the player. I've had players that have, called me at the college level and said, Joe, we have a football trainer that's training us, and I don't believe that we're being trained the right way. Okay, let's talk about it. So we beat it up a little bit. They talk about it. They also have these kind of high-end trainers that maybe guys that they work with in groups and stuff when they go back home. So they know what that level is, and they know what they're doing. So I would pick up the phone. I would have a conversation with their coaches and talk about it, and make sure that if there's issues that we're trying to solve the issues. I will tell you, most of them are really open to the idea. They want the players to get better. They want, the best for them. And they also realize that there's only so much time that they have to commit to that. So maybe having somebody else like is equally important to them, and maybe a benefit to them that, I'm going out of my way to make sure that they're being trained the right way. So, and it's not every league is a little bit different on what they give. But we check in with our guys. I want to know what our guys are doing. I want to know what they're training. I've got, guys that are the 04 group that maybe is going to make the transition to play in the Western League this year, a 16-year-old. Like, we're having conversations. I want to know what they're doing. Like, and if they're telling me, hey, here's my training thing, I'm not going to say right away, but I would say within a couple of days, I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling their Western League team if they've signed and saying, hey, by the way, I've had this conversation. This is what they're doing. Because they're pretty appreciative knowing that, okay, well, this guy's coming and he's going to be prepared when he gets here.
Right. So. No, I liked how you talk about the individualization, which is so critical. I think there is a nuanced path for everybody, right? Everyone needs different things. And I say that to a lot of the guys. I'm like, you know what? Like, what if everybody did just the program that team sent out? I mean, where's your advantage in that?
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're seventh
There's
rounder,
no advantage.
Yeah,
exactly.
You have no advantage. So even though you think you're working hard, you got to start thinking outside the box about what your standard is and what you need to do to be able to close whatever gap it is you need to close, or to lengthen the gap on the guys trying to chase you, right? So and that was something that I talk about that now as something I didn't learn at the time. I learned about like working hard within that box that they gave you, but it's like, why not think outside that box? Because that should really be the bare minimum that you're doing is what they're giving you, right?
Right.
But yeah, when the guys start thinking that differently, and again, getting curious, right? Getting creative. Like, what is this for me? What do I need that's outside of this program? Right. Like that, those are the questions you got to start asking, right? If you're really taking this serious.
Well, I think, because I ask the kids too, we have a conversation and say, okay, at the end of the year, we're gonna talk about the season. We're gonna talk about kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm gonna tell you what I think. I also want to know what you think, but I also want you to have some input on the direction that we take from here. So if somebody says, you know, they give you something that you're not good at, what are you not good at that you need to get better? Okay, so we need to figure that out. Yeah, so we need to make sure that that tool is in place to make sure that you have that. And now they're buying in because they've made that commitment. They understand that they're, without beating themselves up or me beating them up, they're understanding that there are some things that they need to get better. Not just the generalities of it. You need to get bigger and stronger and quicker and fast. I mean, those are great things. But ultimately, what do you need that might be different from somebody else? And they see things throughout the game. Like I remember one time Kyle Turris was talking to a young group of guys that we had, and Kyle said, because somebody asked him, like, what are you doing to kind of stay at the top of your game? And he talked about doing a turn. It's just a simple turn and how he would work on this turn on the ice. And the idea being is that if I can make a transition, say from north to south, just, you know, a quarter of a second quicker, what would that mean for me? And you look around the room, and these guys were young guys at the time. They're thinking, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, you know what it means at the NHL level. That quarter second means a lot. But here's a guy that's playing at the NHL level, and he's trying to figure out a way to make that happen. I just, you know, to be a little bit self-reflective and trying to figure out, hey, listen, not everybody's good at everything. So how do I make sure that I'm better at everything?
Yeah, no, and that's a growth mindset piece, which has become in vogue and is starting to infiltrate the National Hockey League. But is that something that you guys, teams are starting to test for it now too? And to me, it's something that can be trained. But the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, that you mean that everything can be improved and be developed, and having that, you know, that focus when you wake up in the morning, that what am I going to do today to get better? Do you guys look at that with your players at all? It's kind of how they're predisposed in that aspect.
I think so. I think that comes, you know, when you're evaluating. Like I have this thing where I'm, you know, everybody's different and everybody kind of brings a different set of skills and stuff. But I think that there's guys that on teams, in leagues, some guys are drivers, and those guys can drive a team to be better. They can drive their teammates to be better. Certainly, they're driving themselves because they have this relentless approach to it. And I look at that part of it, like what mentally does that guy need? Because why isn't the guy beside him doing it? Why is the guy beside him? Like, this guy's just crushing it. He's like, go, 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 go. And then, you know, there's just a guy kind of skating around in there. Like, why doesn't he feel the same way or feel like he needs to compete the same way? Well, it happens at the NHL level. You know, it just does. You can see the guys that kind of want to drive the team and want to be better, and they're competitive. And then sometimes there's passengers. And I'm not saying if you're like you got a great shot and I'm just going to stay on the outside, these guys are going to give the puck to me all day and I'm going to shoot pucks. Well, if that's your game, well, you know, good on you if you can be successful at it. Very tough to be successful at that anymore in this game. But I'll tell you a quick story. When Kenny Holland was in Detroit, and I was down, and this is around Dylan's last contract negotiation, and Kenny calls me. He knows I'm at the rink. I'm at the new rink at Little Caesars, and he calls me down and he says, "Can you come down, meet me in my office?" And I go down there. So I like to watch warm up and stuff. And these guys all know that I'm like, it's kind of the whole experience. You're watching the whole thing. He calls me down there. I'm like, man, I'm gonna miss warm up, but okay, I'll go. I'm sitting in his office. I was literally in his office through warm up, through the first period, through the second period. We got the TV on. He's got the big TV on. But we're having that exact conversation because I'm telling him, I'm like, Dylan Larkin's a driver. He drives this team. He's going to make every guy around him better. And I could watch the screen and I could tell you the guys that were kind of basically on his back, waiting for him to do all of these things. And, Kenny are just kind of, maybe beating up the roster a little bit as we're looking at it. But that is the reality. So if I go and watch a kid playing, he's 14, 15 years old, and he's skating around and he's got good skills, but he's just not taking it that next level. I ask myself, is it because he's just not physically ready? Because sometimes that's the case. He's just, like there are big players that, and the game, as you know, does hurt sometimes. So if you're not ready for that, is that because he doesn't want to? And it's not about being afraid, even though some Western League guys might think that. This guy's afraid. He's not afraid. He's just not ready. But when he gets the puck, does he try to protect the puck? You know, is he willing to kind of put the leg down and kind of drive into the net? Like, guys will do it. And you know, the guy that kind of starts to separate himself is that player that has that drive. And I do think it's a huge kind of it's like a mental skill that I'm willing to do this because it means that much. And then the rest of the guys start to, you know, kind of grab onto that and get better. You get a team of 6 or 8 guys like that on our team, you got a chance to be a really good team.
Oh, 100%. And then, I mean, there's even research done now, and I've seen it and played in it where an organization itself can have it's like a growth mindset organization where it's like you're promoting guys to get better. Like you want these guys to improve and to look at their development as something that the whole is doing, right? And that starts from a guy like Kenny Holland at the top. And there's other guys that are totally not like that, right? It's like you show up at camp and, you know, we're not worried about your development. It's just whoever has the best day is showing up, right? And that's a way different environment to operate in. So, I mean, at the pro level, it's really crazy. And I think it's becoming much more of a topic of conversation is these guys, how you approach, like you said, the mental skill of how you approach your craft, your career, right? Because there is a way to go about it that serves you and others, which also serves championships and winning. And that starts with the person and the head. So interesting that you talk about that. It's really, really powerful to see it when you see it firsthand. Like, and when the best of the best are like that, and we lost one of them in Kobe Bryant, right? Like when you get these guys with this skill set that start thinking this much differently, like not only are they constantly pushing to elevate themselves, but they're constantly pushing everyone else around them. I mean, and that's a really, really cool thing to see and a really powerful thing to see and a great example for these young guys now that they can see that this is how it actually works, how it can work, you know? Last question, Joe. We've talked, it's crazy. I mean, we start talking about hockey and it always goes like this. I really appreciate your time. But one of the things I'd like to know is sometimes parents think that you guys are super influential, maybe rightfully so, maybe not. Just when as far as the involvement is with a coach or with a team or maybe handling a problem, like would you say you guys do or don't do when it comes to like the nuances of a season? And maybe a kid's not on a power play, or maybe a coach doesn't like them, or do you get involved with that, or do you encourage your player to handle that? Or, I mean, what's the philosophy there at KO Sports when it comes to conflict resolution?
Great question. A lot of things that we talked about previously kind of piggyback onto this about, you know, a problem and how to deal with that problem. And we encourage players to have conversations with coaches. We encourage players to have relationships with coaches so that they understand that this is going on and they're able to have a conversation. I always ask the question, what's your relationship with your coach? And, you know, it's good. Well, so like when you're at practice, can you tap them on the skate and say, hey, coach? Oh, yeah, that's no problem. Okay, well, that's number one. Some guys aren't. Like some guys might be very standoffish. You know, I'm the coach. You know, I tell you to jump, you say how high, and that's it. There are still some of those guys out there. There's getting to be less of them, and I think guys need to understand that, you know, the player now is different than the player was like 2 or 3 years ago, or even 15 or 20 years ago. So understanding how to adapt to that, I think it is key. But having those conversations, talking about it, I would say from a communications perspective, we're advocates. We are advocates for that player in a lot of different layers. We really are. So I think your relationship, meaning my relationship, say with a GM, whether the GM's a BC Hockey League or a Western League or American League or an NHL, it's having a relationship where you can pick up the phone and just have a conversation. It's not always about beating somebody up. It's not always about talking about ice time and opportunity. It's just talking about direction. Again, remember what we talked about. What does my player need to do to be better? So in general, there's kind of like the soft sell approach where we have a conversation. We tell the player that they have to take responsibility. It's part of being a human being and having a conversation. Now, if there's zero traction, and they need to kind of have, well, hey, well, this isn't going on. I'm doing what you told me to do, but I'm only playing 5 minutes a game. Okay, well, maybe I have to have a conversation with the GM and say, is there a reason why this player is only playing 5 minutes a game? Geez, I didn't even know he was only playing 5 minutes a game. Well, he is. So if there's a reason, we need to kind of figure out what that reason is, because he's not going to get a lot of development playing 5 minutes a game. So, we might have that conversation, and he may say, well, it's not about going down and knocking on the coach's door and saying, I demand that you play this player more, or I demand that he gets on the power play. You're just trying to maybe facilitate some kind of traction where there's some kind of change.
Right.
And ultimately, it doesn't always work. I mean, I'm sure you've been part of it. I know most of the, players that I've been involved with, you have that coach or that situation where you cannot get out of it. And you have to go a little bit deeper and maybe have a little bit more of a communication and say, I've called up GMs and said, okay, listen, so we've gone down every route. The players talked to the coach, and he said he's doing everything right, but he's not getting this. Or he's doing everything wrong, but I've seen the games and I've watched the video, and I'm not seeing what this guy's seeing. And I've seen this at every level. And I had a player one time, I was playing in the American Hockey League, and he got a coach, basically he couldn't do anything right. And I just said to him, can you just send me your shifts? Send me your shifts. So he sends me the link. I watch the shifts, and I'm watching, and I'm waiting for him to make these errors that they're talking about. And I'm like, it was shift after shift. And they were almost vanilla because he's just making the right play, right? I think he made one puck rolled off his stick in the whole. And so I said to him, I go, okay, let's have this conversation. Do you have like video? Yeah, we do video. Head coach? Yeah, do video. Okay, so you need to go in and say, coach, could we come in and do the video? He said, yeah. He sat in there with the coach for this entire length of his shifts in the game, which, as you know, when you string them all together, it's not a lot. And then he said, the coach turns to him and says, well, I guess you're right. You weren't that bad after all, right? Like, what do you say? He's like, okay, but I mean, that is the reality, and you're giving him that guidance at the Western League level. Maybe they're not getting that feedback or the video that you would want. I have had to pick up the phone at times and say, hey, listen, like, my player wants to be there. He wants to be part of the team. He wants to contribute. I don't see that happening. We've gone year one, and it hasn't happened. We've gone year two, it hasn't happened. We're halfway through year two. If you don't see this changing, then we have to try to figure something out. And, sometimes it ends up being that you're then maybe kind of advocating a trade somehow, some way to make sure that, he has a different scenery and, a different location to play in.
Right.
But it does happen.
Yeah. No, and those are tough. And I think, I don't know if you see it. I mean, I see it a little bit with these, like the parent starts at the parents level with clearing the path, right? Like any little thing comes up, like they're knocking it down, right? Because little Johnny cannot experience any adversity, and this is not okay. And then when it gets to this older levels where now the parents are removed from the situation, right? You're talking WHL, Junior A, and now Johnny's, should be dealing with this stuff on his own, right? Like
but can't.
But can't or isn't able to. So I've never heard a coach yet that says, you know what, I would rather talk to the agent than the player. Right. Like maybe back in the day, but not in this generation. So like those people skills are important. And it sounds like you really encourage that, which I'm a big advocate of, right? Like go knock on the door, go tap him on the pads, right? Ask him what you need to do.
Right.
Just make sure you follow through with what he tells you to do. And then at least you're doing your part. Right.
And he may give you something that you're already doing, or in your mind that you already do it. But I always say to the player, well, then you got to reinforce it. And you got to say, great coach. Yep. I get it. So I'm going to do this, what you asked me to do. And then, I know we're going to do video again. And then, we'll have that conversation. So he's told him to do something that he may have already been doing. Now he's going to go out. The coach, I always tell the guys, you're just trying to plant a seed in his mind. So when he's standing behind you, that he has an idea what he told you to do. Now you go out and execute on that. He might be in his mind going, check. He might not see the play, but you know. So you can always kind of revisit and say, hey, can we watch? I only got 7 minutes again today. Is there something that I was doing wrong in those 7, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you've got something there. You're just trying to tweak the guy a little bit where he goes, okay, well, I did tell him this. So I better at least try to find a way to come through.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are guys that are not very approachable, and you got to find a way to get to those guys too. Yeah. And that's where good assistant coaches come into play.
Yeah, 100%. Sure. Yeah, like your bro, Dave. Super great. Well, you know what? We'll wrap it up. Is there anything that you would want to leave with as far as talking to young players out there? And then that's really essentially what this show is all about, right? I mean, the journey of getting wherever it is you want to go, whether that be a major junior career or, a Div 1 scholarship or an NHL career. There's different ways to get there, and there's different advice that can be given. But is there something that you'd give the young guys out there that, is your one thing as far as advice to get to where they want to go?
Yeah, I would say this, and it's I want to make sure I define it the right way. As I say, you got to be patient with the process. Like, everybody wants to get there now. You want to get there yesterday. I want to get to that next level, and the process takes time. You go through your battle year. You may or may not have been drafted. Okay, is your career over? No, it hasn't even begun yet, right? But it's like, be patient with that part of it, but don't be patient with your ability to make differences in your game. The guys that make the differences, they get the traction and they move ahead. So there's lots of things you can't control. You worked your butt off all year and you didn't get drafted, and there's 22 teams that went by and 14 times and your name didn't get called. Okay, let's go to work. You figure that part of it out. You couldn't control that. The kid that played in the major Bantam League that didn't get drafted, you couldn't control that. He played the league. He played his game. He didn't get drafted. Let's move on. So that's the part where you got to be patient and continue to understand that you're just starting this journey, and there's lots of time left as far as the next level and the next level. But don't be patient with your training and your commitment to the game. The guys that make the commitment, I 100% believe that the door's open, not because people are rolling out the red carpet for you, but because you're kicking the door in, and you're saying, I did all of these things to make sure that I was ready to play. Yeah. And that next opportunity comes, guess what? You're going to have to do it again. And then again. Yeah. And if you really, really want this, whether it's just to play junior hockey, which is okay, at the junior A level or the Western League level, or Canadian university hockey, it's okay. Whether you work really hard and you get a scholarship, or you get a partial scholarship, and you go to a U.S. college and you play your 4 years there, it's okay. It's okay if you don't make it to the next level. But as long as at the end of the day, whatever level that is, and if you said you wanted it, you said, listen, I did everything that I could to try to make that happen. And hopefully you had some tools and some advice and an advocate along the way to kind of help you with that. If you feel like you've done that, I'm pretty sure you're going to be successful in life, not just worrying about your hockey career.
100%. I love what you say there, because that whole idea of being patient with the process, but then committing to your process in the midst of that is like such a powerful thing, because we've touched on it again and again here during this conversation, is what are your personal standards for your development? How committed are you to getting to where you want to go? And that's not somebody telling you what to do. I promise you that, guys. Everybody listening, it's not following the program, right? It's what's your program? What are you committed to, and how are you going to commit to that? And then that becomes your process, and your process is your trademark. Your process is your brand. And when you commit to that thing, boy, you're going to start kicking doors down, because not everybody approaches it like that. That's the greatest equalizer in the world right there.
I agree with that 100%. They're in control of that. They're 100% in control of that. And if they take that to another level and they understand that, there are going to be some opportunities that maybe haven't presented themselves at 14 or 15 or 16 years old that really might present themselves at 17, 18, 19 when it really counts.
Well, that's what I say to guys I'm talking with now. I'm like, that's a pretty easy phone call to make for somebody like me to a coach or a GM, and say, even if you're a fringe guy, right? This guy cares. I promise you he's going to make your team better. just
Right.
by the way he operates, just by the attitude that he brings to the rink every day, right? This guy wants to get better. Guys want those guys in the room. So, I mean, not only are you getting better, but you're also making yourself a way, way shinier piece of currency when you're walking through that door, because not everyone operates that way, unfortunately. So
No,
anyways,
I agree.
I love that advice, Joe. That was awesome. I really appreciate your time. Awesome guest here. And we'll have to continue this conversation offline someday, because I think we got a lot in common with it.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today to episode 16 of Up My Hockey with Joe Oliver, where we covered a lot of ground in the agency world. I hope you know more than you did prior to this episode. I know that the agency, consultancy, advisory role that they play is very important for a lot of players. And a lot of times we often go into this scenario of selecting one with our eyes closed, because we've never been through it before. It's hopefully something you only do once if you select it right. And different players need different types of agents. So Joe obviously talked about his idea of being a boutique agency, what that means, how the smaller numbers to them means higher levels of service. The chances of you calling them and them getting back to you is very, very high. They build their company off relationships, and for the right players, that is exactly what some guys want. We need high touch points. Some guys don't need as high a touch point. The idea here is to recognize what type of person you are, be honest with yourself, and what type of player you are, be honest with yourself. When do you think you need one, and what type of support you actually need. And make the decision off of the services and the personality people involved, not on the name behind the whole machine. So if that's your one takeaway, I think we did a good job here today. I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much to Joe again for spending time with us and shedding some light in this area. And until next time, keep your head up and play hard. Jason, out.